Welcome to Ghostlore Chronicles. Tonight's tale takes us to Villisca, Iowa, to the infamous murder house, a place where neighbors still claim to hear children laughing in empty rooms, where the floorboards echo with the dragging of an axe, and where the night of the killings has never truly ended. Are you ready to step inside? Because once you cross this threshold, there may be no way back. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and spread the fear by sharing with your friends. And for more true, bone-chilling horror, make sure to subscribe to Ghostlore Chronicles. My name is Michael. Ever since I was a kid, I've had a strange attraction to ghost stories. Urban legends, whispered tales about abandoned houses, stories of unsolved murders. They always pulled me in. But there was one story that stayed with me longer than the rest. The old murder house in Villisca, Iowa. Back in June of 1912, an entire family was slaughtered inside that house. 6 children and 2 adults, all murdered with an axe while they slept. The killer was never found. For more than a century, people have claimed the place is cursed, that it's haunted by the souls of the dead. At first, I thought it was just another legend. But one night in Chicago, I met an old man who told me something that still echoes in my head. He said, "If you go there, you'll hear them, children laughing in the dark, and you'll hear the sound of the axe being dragged across the floor." I heard it myself. The way he said it, with a look of terror still frozen in his eyes, I couldn't shake it off. I had to see it for myself. I had to know if it was true. So one cold October evening, I got in my car and started driving west. The farther I went, the more the world around me seemed to change. The city lights faded, replaced by endless stretches of farmland. Broken down barns leaned toward the ground like forgotten skeletons, and the wind carried with it a low, hollow howl that seemed to follow my car. By the time I reached Villisca, it was almost 10 o'clock at night. The town was small, quiet, and unsettlingly still. Streetlights glowed faintly, as if their bulbs were tired of fighting the darkness. I stopped at a small diner to grab some coffee before heading to the house. The woman behind the counter looked at me in a way that made me feel exposed, like she knew exactly why I was there. "You going over there?" she asked. I hesitated. "Over where?" She leaned in just a little. "The murder house, where no one finds peace." Her voice was low, almost like a warning, but I didn't reply. I just finished my coffee and left. When I finally pulled up to the house, it was close to midnight. The place stood there like a shadow frozen in time. The front gate was rusted and crooked, the windows dark and empty, and strands of moss dangled from the roof like lifeless hair. I swear, for a moment, it felt like the house was staring right back at me. I grabbed my flashlight and pushed the front door open. The hinges screamed as if they hadn't moved in decades. The air inside was colder than it had any right to be, heavy and still, like stepping into a sealed tomb. The wooden floor creaked under my boots. I looked down and saw long grooves in the boards, marks that looked almost like scars, like something sharp had been dragged across them again and again. Then I froze. I heard it. At first, it was faint, so faint I thought it was the wind. But no, it was laughter. Soft, light, the unmistakable sound of children giggling. The sound floated down from the second floor. My throat went dry. Every instinct told me to turn around, to leave, but I couldn't. My legs carried me to the staircase on their own. Each step groaned loudly as I climbed. Halfway up, another sound joined the laughter. It was heavy, a dragging noise, slow, grinding. Took me a moment to understand what it was. The sound of an axe being pulled across the floor. My heartbeat hammered so hard it hurt. Sweat trickled down my forehead even in the cold. But I didn't stop. I reached the last step, and right then my flashlight flickered and died. Darkness swallowed everything. And in that suffocating black, I heard them, multiple children laughing, their voices overlapping in a twisted chorus. And beneath it, the long, scraping sound of an axe sliding across the wooden floor. Coming closer, I stood there in the dark, frozen, my hand gripping the dead flashlight like it could protect me. The house seemed to breathe around me. The air was thick, pressing down on my chest, and every hair on my body stood on end. The laughter grew louder, bouncing from wall to wall, impossible to trace. It wasn't playful anymore, it was mocking, cruel. And underneath it, the dragging sound moved closer, slow and deliberate, like whoever carried the axe had all the time in the world. I forced myself to take a step. The floor groaned under my weight, and suddenly the laughter stopped. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. That silence was worse than the noise. I whispered into the dark, my voice shaking. "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer. Just the sound of my own breath echoing in my ears. I fumbled with the flashlight, smacked it against my palm, and the beam flickered back to life. The light swept across the hallway at the top of the stairs. Empty. Dust floating in the air. Peeling wallpaper. A broken picture frame on the floor. And then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, one of the bedroom doors stood slightly open. Just wide enough for me to see the edge of the bed inside. The sound came again, this time a quick shuffle, like small feet running across the floor. My stomach dropped. I crept forward, each step heavier than the last. When I reached the door, I slowly pushed it open with my foot. The hinges whined, and the room came into view. There was nothing inside but an old iron bed frame, its mattress long gone, springs rusted and bent. Dust coated everything, but the grooves in the floor were fresh. Long scratches etched into the wood, leading straight to the bed. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I bent down slowly, forcing myself to look beneath the frame. For a second, I thought I saw movement. A shadow pulling back, fast, too fast to be human. And then the laughter returned, right behind me. I spun around, my light cutting through the dust. The hallway was empty, but I swear I felt something brush past me. Cold, like a child's hand running across my arm. I stumbled back, out of the room, breathing hard. My instincts screamed at me to leave the house, to run. But some part of me, some stubborn curiosity, held me there. I had come to find the truth. The second door was shut tight. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. I turned the knob slowly, and as the door creaked open, a sudden blast of icy air rushed out, almost knocking me back. My flashlight beam caught something written on the wall. Words, carved deep into the plaster. Letters jagged and uneven, as if scratched in desperation. It said, "He still walks." My blood ran cold. The laughter echoed again, this time from all directions. Above me, below me, around me. And through it came the unmistakable sound of that axe dragging closer and closer across the floorboards. I wasn't alone. Not in this house. Not ever. My legs felt weak as I backed away from the carved words on the wall. "He still walks." The phrase burned in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been here in 1912 had never really left. The laughter circled me again, spinning around like a cruel game of hide and seek. But then, just as quickly as it began, it stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I steadied my breathing and forced myself to move down the hallway. The floorboards beneath me groaned like they were about to give way. I reached for another door, this one leading to the attic stairs. The handle was ice cold, almost painful to the touch. Pulled it open. The narrow staircase stretched upward into darkness. I could smell dust, old wood, and something faintly metallic like dried blood. My light flickered as I climbed. The air grew heavier with each step, and when I reached the attic, my flashlight beam caught something that made my heart stop. There were small toys scattered across the floor. A doll missing its head, a rusted toy car, a wooden block with faded paint. They were arranged in a neat circle, as if waiting for someone to play. And then I noticed the footprints. Tiny, barefoot prints in the dust, circling the toys. My hand shook so badly the light jittered across the walls. A whisper brushed against my ear, soft and childlike. "Play with us." I spun around, no one was there. The circle of toys shifted. One of the blocks scraped across the floor on its own, sliding out of place. My chest tightened. Then I heard it again. That dragging sound. Slow, heavy. The axe. This time it wasn't downstairs, it was in the attic with me. The laughter rose, louder and louder, until it felt like the walls were shaking. I stumbled back toward the stairs, desperate to escape, but the attic door slammed shut before I could reach it. Trapped, I pressed my shoulder against the door, shoving with all my strength, but it wouldn't budge. The laughter turned into screams. High-pitched, overlapping cries of children felt like they were right beside me, shrieking into my ears. Then, in the middle of the chaos, a deep, guttural breath filled the room. Not a child, something else. The sound of boots creaked across the attic floorboards. Slow, heavy, each step closer than the last. I forced the door open with a violent shove, with splintering around the frame, and stumbled back into the hallway. My flashlight beam shook wildly as I ran, my heart slamming in my chest. I didn't stop until I reached the bottom of the stairs. I pressed my back against the wall, gasping for breath. That's when I saw the shadows. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but no, they were real. Small figures darting across the rooms, barely visible, like silhouettes of children playing tag. And behind them, larger, slower, a tall, hunched shadow dragging something heavy along the floor. The axe. And suddenly, I realized I wasn't just walking through an abandoned house. I was walking through a memory that never ended. A massacre replaying itself again and again. And now, I was caught inside it that I pressed my hands against my ears, but it didn't matter. The sounds filled the house like they were coming from inside the walls. Children running, giggling, screaming, boots stomping, the axe scraping. It all blended into a nightmarish chorus. I stumbled into the kitchen, desperate to find some place to hide or at least catch my breath. My flashlight beam landed on an old wooden table in the center of the room. Its surface was scarred with deep cuts, gouges that looked like they'd been made by a blade. The laughter quieted. I looked around cautiously. The kitchen seemed empty, just peeling wallpaper, broken cabinets, and shattered glass on the floor. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it was all in my head. Then I noticed the stains. Dark patches along the wall, faint but undeniable. Old blood, soaked deep into the wood, as if the house itself had been feeding on it for more than a century. I turned toward the doorway, and that's when I saw her. A girl, no older than 10, standing in the hallway half hidden by the shadows. Her dress was white, though it was stained with something dark. Her head tilted slightly to the side, her hair covering most of her face. I froze. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Are you okay? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Her head jerked suddenly, snapping upright, and I saw her eyes. Hollow, black, empty sockets staring straight at me. The flashlight flickered. For a moment, the hallway behind her transformed. I wasn't looking at an empty house anymore. I was looking at the night of the murders. I saw the family at the dinner table laughing. I saw the killer step through the doorway, axe glinting in his hands. I blinked and the vision was gone. The hallway was empty. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from collapsing. I muttered to myself, "This isn't real. It's not real." But then something clattered across the kitchen floor. My light swung toward it, a bloody axe handle, rolling slowly until it stopped against my boot. I stumbled back in horror, nearly tripping over myself. I grabbed the axe instinctively, holding it like a weapon, but the wood was slick and wet. Fresh blood smeared across my hand. The children's laughter returned, this time echoing from every room at once. I bolted through the kitchen, into the living room, desperate to find an exit. The front door was right there. I lunged for it, yanked it open, and found nothing. The door opened into solid wood. No street, no night sky, no way out. Just more of the house, stretching endlessly. My breath caught in my throat. I was trapped in something much bigger than four walls. The house wasn't just haunted, it was alive. I don't know how long I stood there, pressed against that impossible doorway, listening to the house breathe. Time had lost meaning, minutes stretched into hollow hours. When the laughter finally ebbed, It left behind a ringing in my ears and a cold that settled into my bones. I started moving again, slower this time, like any sudden motion might rouse whatever slept in these walls. The living room stretched out before me, but the furniture was wrong, arranged the way it would have been 100 years ago. A high-backed chair near the fireplace, a child's high chair tipped on its side, the rug folded as if someone had been dragged across it. The house kept swapping between eras, and every shift felt like a needle scraping my skin. On the mantel, a row of framed photos hung crookedly, faces frozen in sepia. I stepped closer. The family, Mr. and Mrs. Moore, their children lined up like toys. I could see them laughing, oblivious. My throat closed. I reached out to touch one frame and felt the glass buzz under my fingertips, humming like a low, distant bell. That's when I heard a sound directly behind me. A soft thump, like a small body landing on the floor. I spun. A little boy stood in the doorway of the next room. His hair was matted, his shirt smeared with something dark. He raised his head and smiled, an empty, knowing smile, and then ran. He didn't run like a living child. His limbs moved too smoothly, too mechanically, like a puppet jerked by a string. I chased after him without thinking. Adrenaline seared through me, and for a moment the house felt less like a trap and more like a maze I could beat. The boy darted through the parlor, then into a narrow hall I hadn't seen before. My flashlight carved a white stripe across peeling wallpaper and family portraits that watched me with glassy eyes. At the end of the hall, a door stood slightly ajar. I pushed through and found myself in what must have been a small study. Papers littered the desk. An old lamp lay toppled. On the floor, half buried in dust, was a journal. I dropped to my knees and pulled it free. The leather cover cracked. Inside, a frantic handwriting bled across the pages. Entries dated June 1912. At first the words were ordinary. Lists, notes about chores, a child's scrawl asking about school. But the last entries were different. Rushed, jagged, smeared as if the writer had been crying or shaking. One line repeated over and over. Asterisk, he keeps coming. He whispers at the door. Asterisk, another entry read. Asterisk, lock the children. Do not sleep. I hear him in the rafters. Asterisk, my light caught a stain on the final page. It wasn't dried completely. When I touched it, my fingers came away warm. I remember staring at that warmth and feeling a lurch of revulsion and a clarity that made my stomach drop. The journal was not only a relic, it had been held recently. Something in this house reached forward in time and touched what had been left behind. The laugh came then, close and singular, right in my ear. A small, delighted noise. I turned so fast I hit the desk. The boy who had led me here stood in the doorway again, closer now, and behind him, like a blot of shadow, a tall figure filled the frame. The silhouette moved with deliberate slowness. The shoulders hunched, the head bowed, and it carried something long and heavy. An axe, its edge dull but still obscene. My legs went cold. I understood in that instant that I had become more than an observer. The house wanted me to witness. It wanted me to remember. Before I could think to move, the boy reached out and touched my arm. His hand was bone cold and weightless, but the contact sent a pain like ice into my veins. A flash, no, a memory, exploded behind my eyes. A kitchen at midnight, shouts muffled, shadows moving like smoke. I smelled burning oil, heard a mother crying, felt a small hand slip from mine. I staggered back and the journal flew from my hands, pages splaying open. For a heartbeat the study blurred and I stood in two places at once. Then the figure lunged. Not with speed, but with inevitability, and the force of it knocked me to the floor. My head hit wood. Everything went white at the edges. When I came to, I was on my back staring up at the ceiling. Dust motes fell like slow snow. Warmth spread down my ribs and I realized with a cold certainty that I was bleeding. My shirt had been torn and smeared. Panic flared, and with it the sound of the axe being dragged away. Long, patient, and leaving grooves in the boards like teeth marks. I scrambled to my feet, vision doubled, breath ragged. The hall outside was empty, too empty. The boy's grin still hovered in my mind, and the journal lay open to a page that hadn't been there before. Words appeared, as if ink had bled onto the paper from the air itself, neat and terrible. Welcome home. The house had marked me. I clutched the journal to my chest, and for the first time since I arrived, I felt the heavy, stupid urge to run. But when I reached the doorway, the hall behind me stretched into an impossible distance, and the sound of children's laughter rose like wind in a graveyard. I couldn't tell if I had been running for minutes or hours. The hallway kept folding in on itself, each turn leading me back to the same room, the same faded wallpaper, the same crooked portraits with eyes that gleamed when the light hit them wrong. My chest ached, my breath came ragged, and still the sound followed. The scrape of metal teeth on wood, patient and deliberate, never rushing, never stopping. When I finally stumbled through a doorway that didn't belong, I collapsed against the frame and froze. A man stood in the center of the parlor. He wasn't a shadow, wasn't a ghost, at least not in the way I had seen before. He was flesh and bone, breathing, alive. "Don't move," he whispered, lifting a finger to his lips. His voice cracked with exhaustion. I should have been terrified, but his presence was an anchor, something real in this endless nightmare. His clothes were dusty, his boots scuffed, and he carried a canvas bag slung over one shoulder. His eyes, though sharp, restless, studied every corner of the house as if he expected it to reach for him. "You shouldn't be here," I managed, my voice hoarse. He gave a humorless laugh. "No one should, and yet, here we are." I tried to steady my breathing. "Who are you?" "Name's Daniel," he said. "Some call me a historian. Some say I'm just another fool who can't let the past rest." He tilted his head, listening. "This place doesn't like new blood. It marks you quick. I can see it on you already." I glanced down at the torn fabric of my shirt, at the dried smear across my ribs, and shivered. "You've been here before?" "Too many times," he muttered. "Every visit, I tell myself it'll be the last. But the house, it pulls. You feel it, don't you? That ache in your chest? That's not fear. That's the house pressing its fingers inside you." I wanted to deny it, but the truth was too obvious. The moment I had stepped through the door, something had taken root inside me. Daniel crouched and unzipped his bag. He pulled out a handful of items. A flashlight older than me, a bundle of sage bound in red twine, and a recorder with its battery taped in place. "Tools of the trade," he said. "Not that they ever save anyone, but sometimes they buy time." I stared at the recorder. "You've been documenting this?" His jaw clenched. "Someone has to. People vanish in this house. Tourists, thrill seekers, kids daring each other for YouTube fame. They vanish and the town pretends they were never here. I've talked to families who sent police reports that disappeared. Records gone. Missing posters torn down in the night. This house swallows people, and the town lets it." I felt the weight of his words pressing on my chest. Why? Why would they cover it up? Daniel met my eyes, and in that moment, I saw the answer in his silence. Fear. Not of the house alone, but of something deeper, older. The floorboards groaned overhead. Both of us froze. A soft patter followed, like bare feet running across wood. Then laughter, high, childlike, unmistakable. Daniel's face hardened. "They've found you," he said. Before I could react, he shoved the recorder into my hand. "If you're smart, you'll keep this running. The house hates being remembered." The air grew colder. The lights on my flashlight flickered. In the corner of the parlor, shadows gathered, thick and crawling. Daniel lit the sage bundle, smoke curling into the air. The shadows recoiled, just slightly, like animals retreating from flame. But then came a sound that turned my stomach inside out. A long, dragging scrape across the ceiling, as though an axe were being pulled from one end of the house to the other. Dust rained down. The children's laughter grew louder, echoing from every wall. Daniel's voice was steady, but low. "Once he comes, there's no stopping him. You run. You don't look back. If you see the boy, don't follow him. Do you understand?" I nodded, clutching the recorder tight, my pulse hammering. The ceiling above split with a sudden crack. Something heavy slammed against the boards, rattling the light fixtures. Daniel shoved me toward the hallway. "Move!" We bolted, the air thick with smoke and laughter. As I stumbled down the twisting corridor, the recorder crackled in my hand. A voice hissed through the static, sharp and clear. Not Daniel's, not mine. Something older, darker. "Stay!" I nearly dropped the device, but Daniel's hand clamped on my shoulder, dragging me forward. The house groaned like a wounded animal. Walls warped and stretched, closing us in. And then, just ahead, the boy appeared again. He stood in the hall with his head tilted, eyes black as tar. His lips moved without sound. Daniel yanked me sideways into another room before I could see what the boy was trying to say. The door slammed shut behind us, and the temperature plummeted. The sage sputtered and died. Daniel's face was pale, his eyes fixed on the shadows writhing across the floor. "It's too late," he whispered. "He's awake." The air in that room pressed down like a wet blanket, heavy and suffocating. My lungs burned with every breath. Shadows curled along the floor, twisting into shapes that looked almost human before dissolving again. Daniel's face was damp with sweat, his flashlight trembling as he tried to keep the beam steady. "Don't talk," he muttered. "He listens." I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the recorder like it was the only real thing left. The static buzzed faintly, then shifted into whispers. Not words, not at first. More like the hiss of wind through broken glass. Slowly, syllables formed, spilling out like a chant. "Stay, stay, stay with us." Asterisk. It wasn't one voice. It was many. Children, women, men. Layered, overlapping, desperate. Daniel crouched and began tracing something on the floor with chalk from his bag. Symbols that looked older than the house itself. His hands shook, but his movements were practiced, ritualistic. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "Trying to hold them back," he said, his voice tight. "The children. They're bound here, but they don't just repeat the past anymore. They become the house. And once you've seen them, they want you. They want to drag you into their memory so you can never leave." I shuddered because I could feel it. The tug at the edges of my thoughts, the pressure of little hands trying to pull me deeper. The shadows thickened, rising higher now, their outlines clearer. I saw small faces peeking through the black, their mouths open in wide, soundless cries. One girl reached toward me, her hand pale and trembling. For the briefest second, she looked almost alive, eyes glistening, lips forming a single word. "Help!" Asterisk. I staggered forward, instinct overriding reason. But Daniel's grip snapped me back, his nails digging into my arm. "Don't," he hissed. "That's how they trap you. They'll wear your pity like a hook." The girl's face twisted, her mouth splitting unnaturally wide, and the hand that had seemed fragile turned gray and skeletal. She vanished into smoke. The floorboards rattled. From somewhere above, the dragging began again. Slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Every scrape of the axe was a countdown. Daniel's circle of chalk flared faintly, the symbols glowing as if lit from beneath. The shadows recoiled for a moment, but the reprieve didn't last. The laughter returned, piercing, layered, bouncing off the walls until it felt like it was inside my skull. I dropped the recorder, clutching my ears. But even without the device, the voices pressed in. "Play with us. Stay with us. Forever." Asterisk. My vision blurred. The room tilted, and suddenly I wasn't standing in the present anymore. The wallpaper was whole, fresh. The air smelled of wood polish and kerosene. I saw children running, laughing, their footsteps thundering around me. A mother hummed a lullaby in the next room. The illusion was so complete I forgot, for a moment, what year it was. Then everything shattered with a scream. High, sharp, cut off too suddenly. Blood splattered across my vision, warm and immediate. I blinked, and the room was rotting again, shadows writhing in place of children. Daniel dragged me back to the wall, shaking me hard. "Do you see now?" They don't just haunt this house, they replay it, over and over. And if you fall into it too deep, you'll become part of the loop. I gasped for breath, shaking my head violently, trying to shake loose the images. The recorder crackled on the floor. A child's voice came through, clearer than before. Asterisk, he's coming. Asterisk. Daniel's face drained of color. He bent, scooped up the recorder, and shoved it into his bag. We have to move. The door behind us creaked open on its own. Cold air swept through, carrying the coppery stench of blood. In the doorway stood the boy again, his eyes pools of black, his smile stretched too far. He raised one finger and beckoned. Daniel whispered, "Don't look at him," but I couldn't help it. My eyes locked on the boy's, and in that moment, a flood of memories that weren't mine poured into me. A father sharpening an axe, a child whispering prayers in the dark, the sound of footsteps on stairs, deliberate, unstoppable. My knees buckled. I would have crawled to the boy if Daniel hadn't hauled me upright, half dragging me across the room. The walls trembled, plaster cracking, dust raining down like ash. Somewhere deep in the house, I heard the creak of a stair and the low rasp of breath. Not the children this time. Him, the killer, and he was awake. We burst into another hallway, this one narrower, darker, lined with doors that leaned as if the house itself were bending under some unbearable weight. Daniel's grip was iron on my arm, dragging me forward while I stumbled to keep up. The boards beneath us moaned with every step, and overhead came that scraping sound again. Closer now, more deliberate, like the house wanted me to hear it. The boy didn't follow this time, but his laughter did. Twisted around us, echoing in ways that didn't make sense, bouncing from wall to wall until I couldn't tell which direction it came from. Daniel slowed suddenly, pressing a hand against my chest. "Listen," he breathed. First, I thought it was silence, but then I heard it, whispers, not like the static from the recorder. These whispers were dry, hushed, and terrifyingly close, as if mouths hovered inches from my ear. "He watches. He waits. Don't sleep. Don't breathe." Asterisk. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to bolt. Who are they talking about? Daniel's eyes flicked upward. His face was pale, drawn tight. The man with the axe. Some call him a ghost. I don't. He's something else. Not human anymore, but not gone either. He's hunger. He's habit. He doesn't haunt this house. He is this house. The words lodged like splinters in my brain. I had come here expecting stories, echoes of violence, maybe shadows on the walls. But Daniel spoke of the killer like he was still alive, breathing through the wood, pacing through the rafters. A sudden crash shook the hallway. One of the doors flung open on its own, slamming into the wall so hard the glass pane shattered. Cold air poured out, carrying with it the smell of rust and old meat. Daniel didn't move. His flashlight beam trembled as he aimed it at the doorway. The room beyond was nearly empty, just a bed frame and a dresser half collapsed with age. But then the light caught something against the far wall. A mark. No, not a mark, grooves. Deep, wide gashes carved into the plaster, the pattern unmistakable. Axe strikes, dozens of them, layered one over the other until the wall looked chewed. Daniel whispered, "This is where he practiced." I stepped closer without meaning to. My fingertips hovered above the gouges. The air here was heavier, vibrating faintly, as though the house itself remembered the impact. And then, without warning, the grooves filled dark, wet, fresh, dripping. Blood began to slide down the wall, slick and fast, pooling across the floorboards. I stumbled back, nearly slipping. Daniel yanked me out of the room, slamming the door shut. His voice was sharp. "Never stop moving. The longer you stand still, the more it pulls you in." We pressed on, the house creaking with every step, as though mocking us. The whispers rose again, more insistent, overlapping until they became a chant. "He comes. He comes. He comes." Asterisk. And then I heard it. The footsteps, heavy, deliberate, one after another, descending a staircase that I couldn't see but somehow knew was near. My blood ran cold. This was no echo. This wasn't the children. This was him. Daniel shoved me into a side room, shutting the door behind us. We crouched in darkness, listening. The footsteps grew louder, dragging something metallic with them. My chest tightened with each sound, my pulse thundering so loudly I feared he would hear it. Through a crack in the boards, I caught a glimpse of the hall outside. A shadow passed across the thin line of light, tall, broad-shouldered, with something long hanging at its side. It paused, tilting its head, as though sniffing the air. The axe scraped once across the floor, then again. Daniel's hand clamped over my mouth. I could feel his heart hammering against my back as we waited, unmoving. The figure lingered, silent, patient. And then, without warning, the door handle twitched. Once, twice, slowly turning. The shadows inside the room thickened, pressing against us, as if eager to watch. Daniel hissed in my ear, "If he opens that door, don't scream, don't run, don't give him the satisfaction. He feeds on fear." But my body betrayed me. My legs shook, my breath came shallow, and in the reflection of the glass shard on the floor, I saw the door ease open. And standing there, framed in the lightless hall, was the shape of a man. His face hidden in shadow, his hands gripping the haft of an axe worn smooth with time. He didn't move, didn't breathe. He only waited. The silence was worse than any scream. He stood there, filling the doorway, the axe's edge catching what little light leaked in from the hall. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his eyes on me, heavy and unblinking, pressing down until I wanted to sink into the floor. Daniel's hand never left my mouth. His own breathing had slowed, deliberate, controlled. Somehow, he was calmer in that moment than I could ever be. He leaned forward, whispering so low I barely caught the words. "Don't acknowledge him. Don't see him." But it was impossible not to see. The figure was more solid than the shadows, more real than the children. My brain kept insisting, "This is no ghost. This is a man. Killer." Still alive somehow a century later. The figure shifted. Not a step, not yet. Just a tilt of the head, like a predator curious about the noise it heard in the brush. The axe dragged against the doorframe with a squeal that raised gooseflesh along my arms. And then he laughed. It wasn't the children's laughter. It was deep, guttural. A sound that reverberated inside my chest like a second heartbeat. A laugh that carried no humor, only recognition. He knew me. The door swung wider. His shoulders hunched as he stepped inside, slow and deliberate, the axe scraping across the floorboards. My body went rigid. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but Daniel's grip tightened, his nails digging into my skin. "Not yet," he mouthed. The man moved closer, boots thudding, dragging the weight of his weapon with him. My eyes flicked down, and I saw the floor bending beneath him, the boards warping as if the house itself shifted to cradle his steps. He wasn't just in the house. He was part of it. The laughter of the children rose suddenly, filling the room, circling like a swarm of insects. Faces flickered in the shadows, pale and fleeting. The boy appeared behind the figure, peeking from the hall, his grin wide, eyes bottomless. He mouthed something again, and this time I understood. "Ours." Asterisk. Daniel snapped into motion. He flung the door shut, slamming it into the figure's chest, and yanked me toward the window. "Now!" We crashed into the glass, but instead of breaking, it shuddered like a reflection on water. The surface rippled, cold against my skin. Behind us, the axe tore through the door with a roar, splinters flying. Each swing steady, unstoppable. "Push!" Daniel shouted, shoving me harder into the glass. It gave way with a scream of air, and suddenly I was tumbling through. Not outside, but into another hallway, identical yet wrong. The wallpaper here was fresh, the floor unwarped, as if I had fallen backward in time. I staggered to my feet. Daniel landed beside me, already pulling me forward. "He's splitting the house," he panted. "He wants us trapped in his loop." The hall stretched unnaturally long, and at the far end, I saw them, 6 children lined up in a row. Their faces were pale, mouths slack, eyes glazed. Each held hands with the next, their small bodies swaying gently, like puppets dangling from strings. My chest clenched. I knew their names without ever learning them. I knew their deaths. The boy at the center lifted his head. His voice was clear now, no whisper, no static. "You don't get to leave." Asterisk. The shadows behind him thickened, and the figure of the killer stepped out, axe in hand, his grin matching the boy's. The children's mouths opened in unison, and the air filled with their shrieks. Daniel grabbed my arm, shouting over the noise. "This is it. Either we face him or we're swallowed whole." The floor shook violently, splitting at the seams. Boards curled upward like jagged teeth, the house collapsing into itself. I stumbled, my vision spinning, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. The figure raised his axe high, and the children's shrieks cut off all at once. Silence fell, heavy and absolute, and then the blade came down. The world fractured when the axe fell. Not wood, not flesh, something deeper split open. The floor buckled beneath us, and I felt myself yanked into a void of noise and color, a vortex of every scream, every echo, every death that had ever stained the house. For an instant, I wasn't me. I was each of them. I was the child hiding under a blanket, hearing boots on the stairs. I was the mother clutching her youngest, praying as the door opened. I was the father reaching for a weapon too late. Memory after memory bled into me, until I couldn't tell where they ended and I began. Then silence. I was on my knees in the parlor again, gasping. The room looked almost normal. Furniture covered in sheets, dust motes drifting lazily through shafts of moonlight. No blood, no shadows, no laughter. Daniel stood across from me, bent over, his hands braced on his knees. His face was ashen, eyes wide with disbelief. "We're out," he whispered, as though afraid saying it too loud would undo it. But even before he finished, I knew we weren't. The recorder in his bag clicked on by itself. A child's voice spilled into the room, soft and sing-song. Asterisk, round and round, you came to play, but no one ever gets away. Asterisk. Daniel froze. The air thickened, the shadows lengthened. The house wasn't done. The boy stepped out from the corner, no longer flickering, no longer blurred. He was solid now, real. He looked right at me, his expression calm, almost tender. "You see it now, don't you?" he said. His voice was clear, steady, older than his face. "You can't destroy him. You can't banish us. You've carried us inside you since the moment you crossed the threshold." I tried to deny it, but deep inside, I felt it. The cold weight lodged in my chest, the echo of the axe dragging through my veins. Daniel straightened, fury flashing in his eyes. "No, I've been here too long. I know the rules. You can fight it." He tore the recorder from his bag, smashing it against the floor. Pieces scattered, sparking, hissing. The boy only smiled. The shards lifted from the ground, reassembling themselves midair, stitching back together as though time itself bent to the house's will. The voice resumed immediately, louder now. Asterisk, he comes. He comes. He comes. Asterisk. The axe scraped behind us. My heart plummeted. The figure emerged again, shoulders hunched, movements deliberate. His face was still lost in shadow, but now, I wanted to see it. Against all instinct, I wanted to know who he was, what expression he wore when he killed. The boy tilted his head, watching me. "You're ready." Daniel grabbed my wrist, his voice raw. "Don't look. That's how he takes you, through your curiosity. He makes you want him. Resist it." But I couldn't resist. My eyes lifted, drawn to the shadowed face. And then I saw it. Not a stranger. Not some distant monster from history. It was my own face staring back at me, twisted with rage, smeared with blood. The axe dragged forward, and I stumbled back, choking on a sob. "No, no, that's not me, that's not." The boy's smile widened. "You understand now. The house doesn't just keep the killer. It makes one. Every generation, every trespasser. It needs a host, and you came here willingly. Daniel's scream cut through the room. He lunged at me, pushing me toward the door. Run! Don't let it take you. But the floor beneath him split. Blackness surged upward, swallowing him whole in a single merciless motion. His cry cut off like a snuffed candle. I fell to my knees, trembling, the boy standing inches from me, his hand outstretched. Behind him, my own reflection raised the axe, ready to strike. The boy whispered, almost kindly, "Welcome home." The blade swung down, and the house went dark. The laughter faded, the shadows dissolved. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing outside, the cool Iowa night wrapping around me. The house loomed behind, silent, still, its windows blank and watching. For a long moment, I stood frozen, unsure if I had truly escaped. Then I heard it, faint, distant, carried on the wind, the scrape of an axe across floorboards, and underneath, the echo of a child's laugh. The house had let me go, but it hadn't freed me.